look at the condition our country is in and our world is in. And I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to help you understand what you're seeing in your world from a biblical perspective. And that's my responsibility before God. And we looked at Romans 1, and I want to take you back to Romans 1 because I want you to understand what is really the driving problem behind the collapse of our world. And it can be identified. I've heard a lot of political speeches in my life. No one should be sentenced to hearing very many. And I have certainly had to endure more than I would like. I've heard them in the recent years because of media more frequently than ever. And I have never heard one world leader or one American politician state the real problem in this country and in this world. Never. Not even close. I assume that they don't know it or that they're afraid to say it. So I'm going to tell you what the problem is today. The problem with this country, problem with the rest of the world, problem with every nation, every leader, every ruler, every council, every committee, every assembly, every group that comes together. It's one problem. Romans 1, verse 28. They didn't see fit to acknowledge God any longer. That's it. That's it. Verse 21, though they knew God, they didn't honor him as God or give thanks. So what happened? They became empty in their speculations. Their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools. The leaders of the world are essentially arrogant fools who have no hope of changing anything because they do not understand the problem. Problems in the world are not economic, financial, social, military, not problems of foreign policy, government policy, capitalism, free market, socialism. That's not the problem. The problem is not Iran or an Iranian-induced nuclear war. The problem is not Muslim terrorists. Those are all symptoms of the problem. The problem is not abortion. The problem is not homosexuality. The problem is not sexual liberation. The problem is they didn't see fit to acknowledge God any longer. That's the whole point of Romans 1. The wrath of God, verse 18, is revealed from heaven against those who have known God and glorified him not as God. Do not honor him, do not thank him, and thus they are empty in their ideas, their foolish heart is darkened, and they are arrogant fools. And they are under judgment. God gave them over to sexual immorality, verse 24. God gave them over to homosexuality, verse 26. God gave them over in verse 28 to a reprobate, depraved, non-functioning mind. And the result is unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, deceit. So it goes. They are haters of God. Not only do they do these things, verse 32 says, but they give hearty approval to those who practice them. And I told you that the Democratic Party has basically personified verse 32. They have given hearty approval to murder, hating God, homosexuality, sexual liberation. They have made the sins of Romans 1 their party platform, if you can believe that. This nation already is under divine judgment, the judgment of Romans 1. God has already turned us over to the lusts of impurity, to dishonor bodies. This is a pornographic culture. God has turned us over again in verse 26 to lesbianism, homosexuality. Verse 28 to a depraved mind. Can't think straight. That's why a coalition of leaders would come up with a party platform that advocates these iniquities and the murder of babies and give hearty approval to it. That's how depraved the mind is. That's how perverted the mind of the people who are supposed to be the elite leaders and educators of the world has become. This election will show us to what degree this judgment is operating. If the same people are back in power, then the judgment is escalating. If the party that holds to a morality that we all understand and affirm gets into power, then the judgment is slowed down and we have a time of mercy, a reprieve, maybe a little more time, maybe a window of opportunity to honor God. But in any case, what happens in this election will be what God wants to happen. I have to vote against that kind of platform. My conscience demands that I do that. But it's not because I am politically involved. It's because I would always take a stand against anyone who would advocate immorality. We are already living this judgment out in America. If we continue to go in the same direction, then the judgment is speeded up. If we have a little reprieve for a few years, it's slowed down as a mercy from God. But whatever happens will be what God desires, because He's in charge. There is no political answer to the problems in this nation or the world. Fools gather to solve these problems who reject God.